this was my first real film, and I've always been interested in the concept of the crypto-fascist superhero who causes an appalling amount of destruction in the name of justice. So Dirty Harry, of course, was a prime example of this. And I thought, what if we had a Chinese Dirty Harry who came to Sydney on a routine mission and decided to go after Mr. Big and wrecks the place? I wrote this story, which I naively entitled Yellow Peril. And took it to Raymond Chow of Golden Harvest in Hong Kong. When I came up to make a documentary about Bruce Lee, who unfortunately died while I was in flight. Raymond didn't really like the title, but did see the potential of the picture and agreed to fund half of it, and I got my Australian buddies to fund the other half, and away we went. Because I had written it for Bruce, but he was no longer with us, we got Asia's #2 star at that time, Jimmy Wong Yu, the Steve McQueen of Asia. I think was really, that would probably be his niche at that time. He had also directed 8 movies, his approach and my approach were slightly different.
Just to follow up on the martial arts stuff, could you talk a little bit about the 2 big fight scenes, the dojo and then Ayers Rock? Who did the choreography? And there's some famous faces in there too.
Well, Hung Kam Po, otherwise known as Samo, was 22 at the time, and this was his first big job outside of Hong Kong. He'd come up with Jackie Chan and had entered the ranks of Hong Kong stuntmen and had risen because of his inventiveness in choreography, as well as being extraordinarily athletic for someone of his size. And if you see Enter the Dragon, you see those incredible somersaulting backflips that he does. That's him, and he just developed that skill from an early stage at Peking Opera. But the Ayers Rock scene, that was Samo, who spoke no English, and me, who spoke no Mandarin or Chinese, working it out with sign language. He would offer a piece of choreography, and I'd say, "Oh, that looks good," or "Can we add a bit of this, a bit of that?" And we'd sort of demonstrate on each other. And Roger Ward, who was an ex-wrestler, he was no slouch either. And he did all that. He did that entire scene without any pads. He fell on the rock without any pads, whether he was required to.
Can you please tell us a little bit about the explosion at the end on the roof? It looked like it was a real fire. When you do the final pullback across the bay, it looked like you could see it from half a mile away. Was the public concerned that the building was actually on fire?
There was concern, yes, because you could actually see it from 30 miles away. You could see it from the Blue Mountains of Sydney, if you know your Sydney. Yes, well, it was one of those things. We had a really good special effects guy who had worked on Apocalypse Now, an Australian. He was not the head guy, but he was one of the team under Lombardo, I think. So he said, "I can do this stuff. I can I can do the explosion that you need on the building without doing it any harm." And so I'd said to the owners of the SO building, that, look, we just had this little puff of flame coming out of the windows, and another little tongue of flame coming out of a rather large mortar pot that we put on the roof. We'll do it by 4 o'clock, and we'll notify the fire brigade. And in fact, there was a fire brigade station literally across the street from the SO building. So that was fine, except nothing ever works on time with pyrotechnics. You have to be absolutely safe. So it was after 4 o'clock. Well, we just got the windows blowing out before 4 o'clock, I think one of the building security people started to freak out at that point because it was a bit more than a tongue of flame that seemed to come out of the windows. And it didn't take forever to scrub the burn off the window. Then the big one went off. We set the big one off on the roof, not realizing, of course, that it was now about 4:30, and the fire brigade changes shift at 4. So there was totally new people in fire brigades across the city who had no idea that there was going to be a 30-foot, plume of fire coming off the top of the Esso building, and traffic stopped on the harbour bridge. And within a minute and a half, 6 fire engines had screamed to a halt at the bottom of the building, and were looking puzzled at their mates in the fire brigade, who were just standing there leaning against their cars, watching, watching the flames still billowing. But there was a really big circular mortar, and it just took a while for the flames to die down.
I was wondering, the scene when Jimmy is crawling up the side of the building, the 3-story building to get inside the dojo, how real was that?
That was real. Jimmy had cracked 2 ribs, learning to hang glide. At least we had planned to have him tethered into a wind about 20 feet off the ground on a sand dune, basically, at the Cornell Sands, and shoot all his close-ups for the flying. And then we would have the sails of the hang glider properly billowed by the wind. If you look at what we have, those sails are fluttering rather less than they would if they were riding on the airwaves. So that had happened on the Sunday, and he came to work for a night's shooting on the Monday with 2 cracked ribs. He then climbs up to the 2nd level, just at the bottom of the 2nd level of the drain pipe. So he is at that point a good 25 feet off the ground, and if he had fallen, we would certainly have more injuries to have taken care of. Then at that point I replaced him with Grant Page, who did, as you can see in the crane shot, or in fact it's a cherry picker, just sort of going up with it because we didn't have a crane. Then Grant did free climbing for about 60 feet more in little grabs, because he's very good at that sort of thing. He can climb anything. He's a human fly. Now all the down shots, and what you need in these kind of sequences are down shots to show the height, the depth, and those where then I could put Jimmy on specific positions, and we did cable him inside we just buried the cable inside beside the drain pipe, and because he didn't have to move very far, the cable would be visible. We couldn't do that with Grant because he had to use handholds and things that weren't necessarily right up the drain pipe. For the down shots, he was cabled, Jimmy was cabled, but the trick to making those work is to have something moving below. So I had cars go past for all those shots, and in particular, just before he gets in through the window, we're looking down on him, and there's a car passing below. We think, ooh, he's well over 100 feet in the air.